What self-diagnosis did you give yourself that turned out to be completely wrong? My aunt and I both got really sick, like throwing up for almost 2 weeks, decided we had gotten food poisoning from some bad ceviche at a family gathering. Nope, we were both pregnant, had babies 3 weeks apart. I had just moved to a different country and had to do a 14-day quarantine. By the 8th day I started having stroke-like symptoms, having trouble breathing, heart palpitations, body going numb, not being able to speak properly. I was sure I was going to die and that it was definitely a stroke or a heart attack. I got taken to the hospital only to be diagnosed with panic, anxiety disorder. It didn't make sense to me at the time, but now it does. Doctor, not breast cancer. When I was a teen I woke up with mild boob pain, but told myself that it was all in my head and went about my day, as you do. But by the time midday rolled around it was so bad that I was literally hunched over, groping the offending titty in the middle of class. It felt like it was on fire and trying to shoot off my chest, and I had to hold on tight to keep it attached. It couldn't be calmed. So I got my dad to come pick me up from school and take me to the hospital. I for sure had breast cancer, but we did some of his errands before going to the ER because he didn't think it was anything really serious. The whole time I was holding my chest and stifling cries because I was definitely about to die from breast cancer and it really fucking hurt. Edit, not his fault. I didn't clue him into how bad it actually was. At the ER I embarrassed myself further by telling them all of this. Imagine being the doctor/nurse that has to reassure a 15-year-old that she's not dying from acute breast cancer. Pretty sure they were laughing at me in the nurse's station. Anyway, it turned out that I had an infected abscess, and it was decided that the best way to get it all out was to squeeze it through my nipple. The army doc went at it like he was replacing engine parts, knee on the bed, both hands grabbing my poor titty like it owed him money or something. I remember hating how much his hands were shaking from the effort. For some reason it made me ridiculously nauseous. I didn't even get the courtesy of a safe word. They told me that I screamed and passed out briefly, and I don't remember much after that except really appreciating the painkillers and a few days off school. Not having breast cancer was also pretty cool. I diagnosed myself with a brain tumor due to headaches, was so convinced that I got a CT scan and turned out there was nothing wrong. Anxiety is a bitch and will help convince you of anything negative. I had hypochondria as a teen. The most horrifying by far was when I gave myself an AIDS diagnosis and kept it all to myself. Only now, many years later, have I been able to share this with my closest friends. I was sure I wasn't going to see my 18th birthday. There was no way possible I could have had it, and I didn't have any symptoms. This internal panic lasted for about 2 months and became to a halt because I realized how ridiculous it was. With that stopped also my hypochondriac thoughts once and for all. I know some people aren't that lucky and can't shut it down with just the power of logic. That's why hypochondria is no joke. That shit eats you up inside. When I was 11, I convinced myself I was bleeding to death. I thought I was peeing or pooping buckets of blood, and that's definitely not good. Right before I went to say goodbye to my family, I remembered that thing they told us about insects said like 6 months ago. It was a period. I got my period. I thought I had food poisoning for a month, eliminated everything possible from my diet and started probiotics to reset my digestion. Nothing helped. Turns out it was a late-life pregnancy. We'd thought we were past that point. Surprise. My tongue looked weird and I googled it. I thought I had thrush, so I put gentian violet on my tongue, turning it blue. I went to the doctor later with my blue-ass tongue and she was like, "This isn't thrush, stop using the internet instead of coming to me." I spent years feeling exhausted and like I had to throw up, especially after going out for dinner. I figured I was lazy and had a delicate digestive system that was prone to food poisoning. Nope, it was celiac disease. And the only time I ate bread that made the symptoms really obvious was when I ate at restaurants. Ovarian cysts. Had quite some pain. Pregnancy test was negative and had no other explanation for the pain and the area it was in. Turned out I was in fact pregnant and had a nasty case of nesting pain. The pregnancy test was a false negative. I was very relieved to be wrong. The pregnancy was planned. Ovarian cysts were not. I was having frequent episodes where my vision would blur, my tongue felt swollen, my speech would get slurred, my concentration would drop to null, I would stagger, I would have goosebumps. These symptoms would come all at once and would last for hours. Once they were gone, I felt exhausted. I thought for sure that it was something neurological. Lots of testing later, turns out it was a conversion disorder. The symptoms were an adverse reaction to stress and anxiety. Treatment is helping. Drugs, therapy, etc. The episodes are a lot less frequent now, and also less severe, but I was forced to retire because of this. I didn't like that part. Still having trouble adjusting to that part. Last year one got pregnant. For the first time, I was shocked that no one mentioned how painful it is. Like I had these ongoing sharp pains in my stomach. I don't usually like taking painkillers, but I was taking so many a colleague even noticed and told me I should slow down on them. Yeah, I know pregnancy isn't that painful. Unless it's ectopic. Thankfully had the surgery before it ruptured, and a month before the world shut down. My lower back usually aches for the first minute of the day whenever I would wake up for the last 2 years. I'm 23 years old and I worked at a warehouse for a summer. I chalked it up to just morning aches and pains. It never really bothered me because I never had any pain that lasted for more than 5 minutes in my lower back. So I didn't think much of it. One morning I woke up and I just cried because it hurt so much to move. I was constantly taking Robex, and when the pain started traveling down my right leg I would take Advil depending on what hurt the most at the time. I ended up going to a chiropractor down the street from my home, and she thought I had a herniated disc and sciatic issues. So I didn't think much of it. Eventually it got to the point where I needed gabapentin prescriptions to help numb my nerves. 2 months passed and it was progressing and getting worse. So she sent me for an X-ray referral, both of us thinking nothing would show up because it was clearly just nerve pain and a herniated disc that would heal over time. Wrong. Boy, we were both so wrong. When I went in for my appointment, she sat me down and started off with "So you're not going to believe this," and then proceeded to tell me the X-ray results. I have moderate scoliosis, degenerative disc disease, bone spurs between my L1, L5, and I have spinal stenosis. I had an MRI back in October, fatally in my abdomen, appendicitis scare, which showed the part of my spine that would cause me pain in the near future, and the doctor who checked my X-rays used that scan as a cross-reference just because they were curious and saw it on my file, which led to the stenosis discovery. So now I am currently waiting for another MRI referral to focus solely on those spots to determine how bad everything is, and I have a spinal surgeon referral as well. I'd also like to add I am in Canada and my family doctor took me off of his list right before the pandemic, November to December 2019, and I have been unable to get one since, which is why my chiropractor did the X-ray referral and went over the results with me. I've been calling clinics non-stop. I'm on the government list. It's hell for me right now trying to find a doctor while dealing with this sudden bombshell. The waiting time for the MRI is between 4–8 months where I live. CFS. Me. I had many of the symptoms and was consistently refused medical help because I was told that I was making it all up, as the blood tests showed that there was nothing wrong with me. Also a hallmark of CFS, me. Turns out that I have an autoimmune issue that's treatable. Well, that's 6 years of my life that I'm not getting back. I was nauseous and vomiting all the time at work and home and just about everywhere else. I thought I was in liver failure. The first 2 doctors I saw dismissed me, said it was the flu. Can the flu last 6 months, fucking idiots? The third doctor I went to was skeptical, but I demanded a full blood panel. Turns out I was wrong. It wasn't liver failure, it was kidney failure. The doctor was stunned and extremely apologetic. I totally needed a kidney transplant and it saved my life. That I hurt my spine rather drastically in a fall on black ice. Within a few days of the fall, every time I looked at my feet I got an electric shock from my neck to my feet, and then my legs were going numb. Like shit, man. I fucked my back up. Nope, completely wrong. Turns out I have multiple sclerosis. I have a lot of internal fixation metal, especially in my right leg. I was walking across my kitchen with my adopted kitten. Come on, sweet baby, let's go to be a hhhhh. An incredibly loud pop went off on my right knee. Managed to hop onto my left leg, not wake anyone up with my scream, and not squish the kitten. I wobbled my way back to my room. I was confident I'd broken one of my screws or one had popped out of the plate. Nope. Many x-rays, MRIs, and an orthoscopic surgery. Turns out that pop was the sound of my ACL blowing out. I had an allograft ACL surgery done in November. Edit, cat tax. I still have my spoiled little adorable bastard. First time I had unprotected sex, I had convinced myself I had HIV. I had just gotten divorced and hooked up with a girl I knew in high school. We didn't use protection, and a few weeks later I was getting these raised welts on my arms and inner thighs. Google told me one of the things it could be was HIV rash. My doctor, who I've known my whole life, said I was an idiot, did an STD test, and diagnosed me with bug bites. My neighbors had brought bed bugs into our apartment building, so I'm clean and STD free, but it also taught me not to Google symptoms for my mental health. Strep throat when I was 26, got some Advil, went back to work. Thought I could only sleep sitting in bed because laying down made me unable to breathe. I looked like shit for 3 days. Co-workers forced me to go home and see a doctor. I had mono. Had to miss work for 2 weeks. I get extremely itchy on my belly and groin area. I always think it's because I did a bad job rinsing soap off after taking a bath. It's because of the oral steroids I take for my allergies. This has happened 4 times in the last 5 years, and I forget every damn time. I thought I was tired all the time because I didn't eat healthy and was chubby/didn't exercise. I took naps and began to more frequently lose focus at work. I took a blood test because our country said they were desperate for blood donors. Due to COVID, less people were giving. Turns out my iron was 7, normal range is between 3,300. I had iron deficient anemia, it was so low. I got an iron infusion and 5 days later felt incredible. That I was going to need a kidney transplant in the near future. Rewind a year, admitted to the hospital for an untreated UTI that spread to my kidneys causing me to go septic. Stayed for about 4 days. While being released, asked the doctor if my kidneys were damaged and he said yes. Too drunk, depressed to go to the specialist the next day. Fast forward a couple months and I had stopped drinking and finally started taking care of my health. The anxiety of what was wrong with my kidneys eventually outweighed my medical anxiety. Went to the doctor yesterday and my kidney and liver numbers are actually near perfect according to my doctor. I was very fortunate it ended up that way. Don't ever assume a UTI will clear up on its own. It won't. stomach cancer. One day a huge amount of blood in my stool and was convinced I was going to die. Google confirmed my prognosis. Forgot about the large amount of beets eaten the prior day. Next day all the blood was gone and I'm now back on the road to recovery. Narcissistic personality disorder. I used to do a lot of maladaptive daydreaming and I misunderstood a comment on the internet that made me think I had NPD. Thankfully I know how to speak the language of the country I was living in at the time, and there was a psych hospital nearby that charged a reasonable amount and had an appointment available not long after that. I wish everyone who complains about self-diagnoses of mental illnesses, especially the ones who bitch about them non-stop, would call the applicable members of their government about making affordable mental health care available to more people. In January of 2020, me and a bunch of people in my class got sick all of a sudden. I felt like I was dying. My chest hurt, head hurt, fever, lightheaded, and when I fell asleep I couldn't breathe. When I got back, everyone was joking, saying that I got that new virus from China, but at the time there was only one case that was a week prior. I had no idea what I actually had, but fast forward 2 months later it turns out it was in fact COVID, and many other schools in my area had similar incidents happen months before there were even people getting tested. Every physical illness to do with the digestive system, including but not limited to stomach cancer, ulcers, celiac diseases, etc. Turns out, all of it was just another side effect of anxiety disorders, that despite all other symptoms I absolutely denied having. I went to the hospital 3 different times because I thought I was having a heart attack. Turns out they were panic attacks each time. I have meds now to prevent panic attacks. One doctor was annoyed, which I found funny. Dude, I thought I was dying. One of those trips involved a volunteer fire department and an ambulance ride because I was camping far from any hospital. Self-diagnosed severe depression that more or less rendered me incapable of normal functioning, could barely get out of bed in the morning, lacked the desire or energy to do much of anything, and felt like even trying to get help was pointless, which I attributed it to the depression itself. Turns out I had a severe vitamin B12 deficiency and the symptoms are scarily similar. The fact that I was a bit depressed, but not more than any stressed out young adult, made me tunnel vision on that and ignore any other causes that may be contributing. Don't neglect your bodies like I did, people. That sinking feeling of despair and hopelessness is not always your brain fucking with you. Sometimes it's your body's way of crying out for help. I did not have an ulcer. My mother had suffered from ulcers and I was sure that was what I had. I had gallstones, but the surgeon I was referred to by my nurse practitioner didn't believe that, thanks to the ultrasound that showed my gallbladder was slightly enlarged, but not full of stones. They went back and forth with each other, and I guess based on my symptomatic presentation, and the fact that the NP was just a badass, God rest her soul, he went ahead and scheduled the surgery. In recovery he informed me that not only did I have many stones, but my gallbladder was so infected that if he hadn't operated I would have been in much worse condition, as it was near rupturing. Thank you, gallbladder sludge. The sludge was apparently the culprit for hiding the gallstones, as on the ultrasound it masked the stones, and it wasn't slightly enlarged. It was very enlarged. The surgery was done laparoscopically, but the scar where the main instrument was is about the size of a golf ball, compared to the other two, which are the size of pencil erasers. They had a very difficult time getting the offending appendage out of the incision. And it still itches me to this day, 7 years after the fact. TLDR, though I had ulcers, turned out I had horrible gallstones and a very infected and swollen gallbladder. When we were going through an airport I noticed a small red rash behind my brother's ear. It looked like a spider bite or a mild reaction to something. My brother, a massive hypochondriac, immediately convinced himself he had both meningitis and brain cancer, insisted we see a doctor as soon as we land. By the time we'd landed, the rash had cleared up. Not the only time he's done something like that.